Welcome back to the Stressing Values podcast. This is a very interesting interview with Alex Holliman. Very open. He talks very openly about the challenges of B Corp and the compromises that he's had to make. But it's also a fantastic testimony to something I've been advocating with all of my clients: stepping out, stepping back, taking time to strategize. In Alex's case, this is something that's forced on him by COVID. Onset of COVID, his business declines by 40%. He's got a lot less to do, but he spends the time that's been created strategizing and looking across the piece and alighting on the B Corp status as a vehicle, a powerful vehicle to enable him to really plan and create systems for delivering on the values that he's always had throughout the time of the business over the last 14 years. And the discussion moves through quite detailed stuff, some very interesting stuff about how you actually increase your performance, your environmental performance, and your social and employment performance within the B Corp structure. And you'll hear a lot of discussion about Scope 3 emissions, which you may not be familiar with. Scope 3 emissions are actually the sort of, I think, the most important aspect of measuring your carbon footprint. So Scope 1 is the stuff that you generate, you directly are responsible for. Scope 2 is the stuff that effectively you're responsible for, but it's the energy consumption or the carbon pollution caused by the energy that you use, so the electricity, gas, whatever you use to heat your offices. Scope 3 is actually what you buy, your business travel, your employee commuting, things like that. So really interesting focus on Scope 3. That's the sort of peak high level of stuff that you need to look at. And then we move across to, well, the costs of value. So Alex is quite clear. They took a decision to exit some quite important clients that they'd been working with for some time because they didn't fit the B Corp values that were now really quite sharply in focus, and how they had to go. But they're actually now, through being honest, through being very open about what they are trying to achieve and that they are really in this seriously, they're attracting new and for them better clients. And the last thing, the tips at the very end, real focus on systems and planning, which is not surprising given really what I've just been saying, but it's clearly of great value to be able to create systems that enable you to deliver what you told the customer you would deliver and have them properly functioning. So really wide ranging, covers a huge amount of ground, very interesting. I hope you enjoy. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest in my podcast series, Stressing Values. I'm delighted to have Alex Holliman of Climbing Trees joining us today. Alex has got a very interesting story to tell us and a very interesting agency to describe. So I won't hesitate to introduce Alex and say very big welcome to the Stressing Values podcast.
Thanks, Colin. Good to be here.
And great to meet you. I've been looking at your website. This extraordinary activity that you do, and I love the sort of approach to marketing. But for our audience, perhaps you could kick us off by telling us what you do in your own words, and what the business stands for, and how it, what you do in Climbing Trees.
Yeah, for sure. So we're a performance ads and SEO agency. Ultimately, we help people get found on Google, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, Reddit, Quora, Microsoft, all of them.
Oh my word! Yeah.
And we work with organisations like Greenpeace, Olympus Cameras, Volvo Construction, and we've been trading for 14 years. And I think purpose and values have really come sharply into focus. I think there'd always been some emergent strands of it in the first phase of the business, but definitely in the last 4 years, we've made the move to try and really consider the impact we have in the world. And I think that's come sharply into focus over the last 4 years for us. And so we're a B Corp agency. We measure our carbon footprint. We've reduced that. We look at the makeup of the team, the diversity of the team. We're trying to be a really, really welcoming company for people to join us, and just try and be the kind of business that we feel the world needs. Because I genuinely believe that business can lean into some of the problems that there are in the world and help resolve them.
Oh, I totally agree with you. I think business can and should be a force for good. I mean, it's got so much potential. But what happened, say, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, that made you want to go down this quite explicit B Corp journey?
So I think it was in March 2020, so the start of the pandemic.
Oh, right.
We went down 40% in 2 weeks.
Oh,
I thought, if we have another 2 weeks like that, we're going to go under. And I think that was the time when the Chancellor at the time announced the furlough scheme.
yes.
And I think business then took a big sigh,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't lose any more clients. So we didn't actually have to furlough any staff or make any staff redundant or anything like that. We traded through, but I didn't have any work to do. So I had a team that had some clients to work on. There was no new business going on.
Yes.
And for the first time since I started being very involved in the business, I was able to take a step back and to use that time to think about strategically, where are we going to go as a business? And so I then undertook the B Impact assessment myself. And rather than using it as a framework just to get a badge, we've used it as a framework to really start thinking about the different areas that a business touches, whether it's the environment, local community, staff, clients, and how we actually govern ourselves to use that framework to actually do better. And there's some things we've done really well, but there's some areas where I hadn't really considered it because I've just been busy in the day-to-day sort of mayhem of trying to make sure we make payroll and keep the lights on.
I think that there's lots of interesting strands there. I mean, not least the fact that this was you were forced to do it, but it was an opportunity to step back and look across the business and strategize.
Absolutely. And I think since I've stepped back, we've over tripled in size. I'm no longer involved in day-to-day client comms, the team lead on all of that side of things. And I think I was probably looking back a bit of a bottleneck. I'm now not. So the growth of the business, we have a model that we can scale, we can recruit ahead of that growth curve. And, you know, in what have been a couple of challenging years in 2023 and 2024,
Yes.
in the agency world, the endeavour and the hard work we're all putting in is sort of leading us to some growth. So we've got a couple of positions we're recruiting for at the moment, which are new positions. We're not replacing people.
Oh, how fantastic. Yeah, you can see those green shoots coming back. Yeah, because I spend a lot of time with clients talking about how they need to, and how they can actually delegate. And I get a lot of pushback saying, oh, I'm the only one that can do it. It's always been me that does it. I'm the only one that has the values and that. How did you actually manage to delegate? I mean, there must have been a temptation to do more work yourself when you're cutting back under that in COVID.
I think for maybe the first 6 to 9 months, things were quiet.
Mm.
A few bits of new business, but not at the pace that it had been going into the pandemic. And so I'm quite able to empower the team that we have,
Right.
get out of the way. And I think we have a sort of cadence or a rhythm that we work to, where if people are doing something, they include a little bit of me at the beginning of the project,
Mm-hmm.
so that I'm sort of comfortable with the direction it's going off on.
Yes.
And then I sort of circle back to it at the end. And usually with 80-90% of the way there, I'm not such a control freak that I have to have it done exactly as I would. And I think then you go through a process of establishing confidence with your team, where they have confidence to proceed in a way that they are almost managing upwards in terms of how I'm viewing their work. And then I have confidence in them in terms of they're going to do a good job of this. I don't overly need to touch it or be involved now.
Yeah, I think that's marvelous to hear. So I think in the middle of that, you said there's quite a lot of importance put on that kickoff meeting. So are you saying it's that the first steps that the project takes have to be in the right direction?
Yeah, and I think it's probably a lot of my learnings in business come through repeatedly doing the wrong thing.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
almost through the pain of getting to the end of a project and not being happy with it, thinking,
Yeah.
well, actually, if you include a little bit of me at the beginning,
Yeah.
get my buy-in in terms of the process or the scope of work that you're going to undertake with that output. And so, yeah, I think that's the process we try to follow across the team. But increasingly, there's areas of the business now, whether it's finance or marketing or the actual technical work we do, where we now have a sort of emergent leadership team that are just running those areas, and they then use me as a sort of sounding board for stuff. So
And how does that feel?
if I feels really good. I think what the worrying thing with some of it is we've got team members now that are doing better work than I ever did, and so and with that we're then able to we're recruiting staff with more pedigree in the industry. We're attracting more clients of a sort of senior sort of global perspective. So it feels like we've got some sort of positive inertia going on.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that you're creating that momentum by bringing in and encouraging those skills and letting people do their best.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mm. So, well, with this new empowerment, where do you see the company in 5 years?
So I'm 49 this year.
Mm.
I started the business when I was 35, and so I'm sort of, I'm thinking about, what the next 5 to 10 years come for me personally.
Yes.
And I think we've got a lot of ambitions touching all of the stakeholders in the business. I think at some point it's reasonable to expect me to start stepping back, whether that is, that could probably be well underway in 5 years.
Mm.
But then with the emergent leadership team that we have, being able to create something, maybe an employee ownership trust or something like that, where
Okay.
goes from being just a business that I own myself to actually giving and rewarding the team here for their hard work and efforts as well. I think we've got ambitions to further reduce our carbon footprint, and we're leaning a lot into our scope 3 emissions with that. We in 2020 we were 6 white men in an office in Essex. Now
Mm.
we've got a gender balance of almost 50-50. We
Yeah.
have gender balance at a senior leadership level. We have no gender pay gap at any level in the business. We have ethnic and sexuality diversity in the business, and that's just we've changed our recruitment practices. And I think what we want to try and do is to encourage more women into our industry. And so
Brilliant.
various outreach mechanisms with colleges and schools locally that the team are really committed to doing.
Okay.
And we know, for example, that there's schoolgirls, 18% of them would consider a career in the digital industry beforehand. After a day's session with some of my team, that'll move to 40-45%. So that's very early, like stage, like attraction of greater diversity in our industry, because we've got
Yes.
problems with there's not a lot of female-led businesses, agencies in the UK, and that's something that needs to change. And then when you look at ethnic diversity,
Mm.
it's a greater problem. And so there's a big piece of work there that we really want to try and focus on. We want
Right.
to improve our supply chain. We want to, carry on with picking up some awards for our work. We want to pick up some, some large brands that we can sort of support in their marketing endeavors in the coming sort of years. And so it's all to play for. There's a massive opportunity for us.
Yeah, I should say so.
Yes,
Yeah, and but it's about values, isn't it? It sounds. It's not. There's nothing there. I don't think you mentioned turnover or sales. It was really about the balance of the organisation and about what the work you're doing.
absolutely. And I think that's because that's my role now. We have targets in the business. We're trading above our targets. We've grown 30% year on year.
Mm.
We have internal mantra of we want to double in size in the next 2 or 3 years. And so we'll probably be 25 people by the end of this year. So we have a certain degree of confidence in terms of our growth. It's not that I take it for granted. Some weeks I'll be doing 50, 60, 70-hour weeks when the
Mm.
business demands it. But that growth ambition is I want to make sure that we grow, but not at the expense of any of the potential stakeholders there are.
Yeah, right, right. I was really interested that you picked up on scope 3 because that seems to be Well, the area that most people duck, especially in organisations like yourself, because it's relatively easy to control your relatively low carbon footprint of an agency. But to start looking at the scope 3, what are you actually going to do?
So we work with an external carbon accounting firm. We've modelled our carbon footprint from 2019 through to, we're just processing 2023's data at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
We have no scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, but we have a lot of scope 3 emissions.
Yeah.
As we've grown, our scope 3 emissions have grown.
Yeah.
If we look at our scope 3 emissions from a per person per year perspective, they are decreasing.
Right. Okay.
And so, but we have this big chunk of money that we spend. So that is, we have changed how we travel, we've changed how we commute, we've changed the amount of time people come into the office. We've done a survey of the team in terms of their home electric supply. We've done the same for the office. We've looked at retrofitting our office with different lighting, insulation, and speaking to our landlord about it. And that sort of fell on stony ground. And so there's actions that we can undertake. But then we look at our supply chain. And so that is our suppliers,
Yeah.
the systems we use, and the ad spend that we deploy on behalf of our clients. So we have about £800,000 worth of ad spend that goes through the business.
Yeah. Yeah.
One option would be for us to say to our clients, you spend that and it won't touch our scope 3 emissions. But that's a bit disingenuous.
Yes.
So with all major app platforms, we have engaged with them via the customer service that we're able to. So we've spoken to Meta, TikTok, LinkedIn, Google, and asked them what they're doing with regards to carbon emissions, what information they have about carbon emissions. We spoke to the in-house team in Mountain View, California for Google, that are trying to come up with a way so that if you spend money on Google Ads, there is then a measurement for the carbon footprint as well.
Oh.
And so that is something that the in-house team are developing. But what I want to know is what actions we can undertake. So in terms of that media spend, there is wastage that we can remove, inefficient ad spend, inefficient placements, optimizing images, but there's not that much we can do.
No.
A lot of these big tech companies, they have amazing approaches to renewable energy throughout, all of their server farms and that kind of thing. But with the ad spend, there's not much we can do. With our supply chain, we have just undertaken a survey of all our SME suppliers, asking them what their plans for net zero are, if they're a minority-led business, if they're based in Essex, where we are. And we're trying to pull that data together so that we can then make some purchasing decisions going forward, so that the money we're spending is going to suppliers that are considering their impact on the environment. And then the final piece, is
that's good.
Asking me, but the final piece is we have emailed every system we use. So it could be Slack. We use a system called ClickUp for project management. We've asked them what their sustainability policies are, what their plan for net zero are, and whether they've got any information about the carbon footprint per pound or £1,000 for their system. And so all of that work is something that we've undertaken this year to really try and lean into those scope 3 emissions.
Yes.
And my ambition then is to make some commercial decisions on our spend to reduce it.
Wow, I love that sense that although you're a relatively small cog in this huge, the world of social media and advertising, that you still think, no, I can influence this. I can ask that question. I can poke around and make it clear that there are customers out here that are worried about this stuff.
And my hope is that if we get thousands of companies doing this kind of action, that if the customer service centers of Facebook ads or Google ads are getting these kinds of requests, there's a commercial imperative on them to start sharing this information and taking action.
Yeah, I think so.
And it's not in a hostile way. It's trying to be an encouraging sort of, the market is demanding this, so let's try and do something.
Yeah, so please tell us, please share. Absolutely, I think that is the way forward. I mean, we've got to keep demanding better, but we've got to start with the information first. Really good, really good. So when you obviously went through quite a challenging period, you know, COVID and post-COVID. I mean, this last couple of years. How have your values that you've adopted, how have they helped you navigate that?
So I think there's the B Corp framework
Mm,
has foundationally built the business out in a much better way than I'd been doing it.
right.
So it gave me focus to new areas that I hadn't necessarily considered in the first phase of the business.
Okay.
There's some businesses I see get through the B Corp framework and say, well, we're always doing this stuff. It's nice to get the recognition for how great we are. For
Mm,
us, unfortunately, it wasn't the case. We were, not that good in some areas.
okay.
And it gave us that framework where we could actually do better. And so we really lent into that. We've looked at the clients we work with. We've changed the structure of some of those clients. We've exited some clients from the agency that, with this new insight, were not a good fit for us.
Yeah.
We've changed our branding and our proposition to attract like-minded brands. We want to work with brands the world of tomorrow needs, and increasingly that is gaining some sort of momentum.
Right.
So there is an attraction sort of piece there. But I think in terms of values, we've always had values
Mm,
about being ethical, curious, client-focused, and caring. And those values are, we haven't got like great pictures in the office with a waterfall and a word.
oh, do you not?
No, not yet. And so it's almost like the values we have, we talk about them on the website. We've got a video where that some of the team have unpacked them in terms of what they mean to us.
Yeah.
But that's almost like the compass that we use when no one else is looking. And
Yes.
so they're most relevant when business is good. You don't have to fall back on your values.
Mm,
When you have a problem in business, when it could be a problem between team members, it could be a problem with the performance of a team member, it could be someone's made a mistake on a client account.
yeah.
The values are almost like the compass that we engage, because
Yes.
sometimes we're the situation recently where a member of the team came to me, they'd messed up on a client account, the number was significant, it was a 5-figure sum.
Ooh.
And I can remember that gut-wrenching feeling, thinking, oh no. And
Yeah.
so then, you cycle through the options in your head. Do nothing about it. Don't
Mm,
tell anyone. Hide it.
yeah.
And so then within about 5 or 10 minutes of talking it through, I was on the phone to the client,
Mm,
being honest with the client because of the value of being ethical, saying, this is what's happened. We've just found out about this. This is what we've done to resolve it. There has been a mistake that if you wanted to, you could ask for compensation from us. And if you needed to, we would give that. And the client was just like, you've been so honest about the whole thing. We can make this work. Don't overly worry about it. And so sometimes I find when you play from your values, there's a focus where you have to stretch yourself to try and live by them. But usually through employing them, we find things work out better.
yes, it's gut-wrenching in the moment, because you say, as you say, all those temptations that you see on police dramas to hide it and pretend it never happened. Actually, just get it out in the open, give it some air, and be humble with the client and whoever else. Tends to be a better result, but very painful.
Absolutely. And I think from the client's perspective, there's a certain amount of trust because you haven't hidden anything. You
Mm,
have, you've been honest, and honesty, you might not like what you hear, but there is a certain amount of trust that you get from it.
yep, absolutely. Yeah. And how does that work with the team? If you have to get into a sort of quite disciplinary situation or a performance management situation, how does that play out then?
So we're fortunate. So we haven't really had any performance management or disciplinary situations, but sometimes there can be a problem in client communication or something like that.
Mm, mm,
And where we've grown and we've onboarded new team members into the team, we have a specific approach to, say, client communication.
yep.
We don't default to email or like WhatsApp messages or like booking calls in on Zoom.
Mm,
We're quite traditional in terms of, sometimes if I get an email from a client where they're not happy about the performance of something, or something's not on track, or they've got an issue, the temptation can be to be a keyboard warrior and type something out.
yeah.
And what I prefer to do is just pick up the phone,
Pick up the phone.
speak to the client. You can hear their voice, you can hear their tone, you can get to a point where you can understand the thing that's emotionally important to them. You can reassure them that it's a priority, and you can then just get on with taking care of it. Whereas that backwards and forwards on email, I find doesn't actually help you achieve it, because there's almost like a posturing thing that can happen. So I think that usually when there's an issue with a team member or something like that, we can at some point retreat back to our values, and there is a lack of alignment on one of them. And so there's a sort of almost a values onboarding that people get, whereby actually culturally, if you do mess up, that's okay. You can talk about it. If there is a problem, client focus is the number one thing that we have as an agency.
Yeah.
I've got a background of working for 3 of the top 5 media agencies in the UK.
Yes.
I was schooled in the 90s on client service. And so it's a fundamental thing where I'm not egotistical about a lot of things, but I believe we can outservice most clients and look after them and give a damn, because the clients that we have, people in marketing roles, have some of the shortest tenures of any top level suite in businesses.
Oh.
And by aligning ourselves really, really closely with them and looking after them as people and their concerns and their worries, I believe we can make a real difference.
Wow, I didn't realize that. So you're saying that they literally don't, they move on to other pastures. Is that it more quickly than other roles?
Absolutely. I believe CMO level people have some of the shortest tenures at that sort of C-suite level.
Okay, I hadn't realized. Yeah, that's interesting. So how does it work in the other way? Some of the people I've met who have got B Corp status have had almost the other issue, where new staff or existing staff have been worried about particular clients that don't fit the B Corp values. And you said you had to exit some, but how challenging has that been? Have there been some that you wanted to keep, or you needed to keep commercially, but that you've had stress points around?
So I had a very close friend of mine landed a job working for a sports betting software company. And they came to me and said, Alex, we've got £250,000 of ad spend. Do you want it? And so this was maybe 2016. We had no qualification procedure. We had no client screening procedure.
Okay, yeah, that was
about it. And I was just, go on then. That'd be great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Took him out for a nice lunch. Life was good. Going through the B Corp process, where you start thinking about our impact, the impact that we have as an agency is small. The impact that our clients have is larger.
Yeah.
And so when we started looking at our clients through that lens, there were 2 that we had: sports betting software provider and another company that 0.5% of their business went into the defense industry. And so with the defense industry, you've got this oxymoron, or you've got a counterintuitive thing where, are you fighting for peace or are you fighting?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And we just made the decision that we didn't want to be involved in it. So with both of those clients, I had to step up. I took my friend out for lunch. I said, we're going to have to stop working with you. He said, Alex, I've been expecting this. And we were able to migrate the account through to someone else.
Yeah.
And the other company was bought out and they in-housed everything. And we were able to then, accelerate that process.
Yeah.
So they were still in our impact report for 2022.
Okay.
But since we've got maybe 30% of the clients we would consider purpose-driven charities, people helping reduce the effects of climate change or bring greater social equality. We've got 70% of clients that are in the bit in the middle, where they're not purpose-driven businesses,
no,
doing anything bad. They've got large organisations doing some good stuff, but they're not like.
That's not their role. No, their focus is commerce.
So our house is now in order, and then what we did is we sent out a survey to our entire team, asking them, would you feel comfortable working for a high carbon emitting client, a petrol client, a client that charges these payday loans, or high interest clients, or sells like sugary sweets to children? And we did a survey of all of these contentious areas for the existing team. There wasn't a unanimous agreement. And what I did is I drew some red lines around that and said, we will not work on these clients.
Right.
And so we know since 2022, the beginning of 2022, we have turned away pitch opportunities totaling about £650,000.
Well,
we wouldn't win, but we'd probably say our run rate.
You might not have won them all, yeah, but you didn't even try.
Yeah, 45% of those you could reasonably expect we'd win. And so in saying no to those people, we then are attracting more of the people we do want to work with.
Yeah.
And so we're speaking at the moment to some new prospects, a fantastic organisation up in London that is specifically coming to us based on our values. There's a company that's rewilding parts of Scotland that we're speaking to at the moment.
Okay.
And so we're attracting these organisations that share a similar worldview to us, and there is an alignment. So, it's exciting times.
Yeah, sounds it. So so underneath that, it actually says that you've got to make these tough decisions in order to put some flesh on the sort of beak or bone. Really, you've actually got to prove, in a sense, that you're for real in this environment.
I think that's what we chose to do.
Yeah.
And I think values and ethics are a personal thing.
Yes.
And it's not like there's a scale. It's not like you are people are perfect and totally practice a value the whole time.
Yeah.
But I do think for us, it's about the authenticity and this journey we've been on from a state of imperfection to where we are today. And we're still imperfect, and we've still got a major amount of work we can do, and actually a lot of things we can do better, but we're striving. And I think that's the important thing, is that striving to try and do better. For me, that's an interesting place to be, because there's that feeling of progress, improvement and achievement.
Yeah, and no one's, well, perfection is actually not possible, I don't think. So I think this is the essence of it, is how hard you want to work towards a better world.
Yeah.
And I think I love that attitude. I think it's really positive. You mentioned earlier on that I might sometimes work 50, 60 odd hours. But having stepped back. So I'm very interested in that, because surely the idea is you step back and it's a little bit less time consuming.
So I think there are times in the first phase of the business where I'm always getting to work early. We don't have to start till 9, but I'm in at 8 every day.
Yeah.
I work most evenings doing some low-level admin, and that's a choice that I make for myself, because there's that personal view, and there's my personal life, like the circumstances we've got, where I'm thinking that potentially there could be an event where I exit the business in the next 5-6 years. So I'm prepared to take some short-term hit in the amount of time I've got to spend in my life. I enjoy my work. I never have to I never trudge into work resentfully.
No.
I've got to do this.
Yeah.
I don't think I particularly skip into work either. I don't think that's my style, but I get to work, I present, and I think I just get on with whatever I've got to get on with, and I try and do my best. I like feeling like I end the week knowing I've left nothing undone.
Yes.
There's nothing else I could have done this week to get value out of it.
Yeah.
So I think that sort of work-life balance piece is something where I'm prepared to do that, because I have that skin in the game. I have a younger team where they're in a different phase of life. They haven't got a family, maybe. And so I don't make the demands on them to mirror my behavior.
Yeah.
But there are, we have a cohort here of staff that really care about what we're doing, really care about our clients. And so we do have to be mindful and watch people's stress levels, especially in a remote first world, because we're quite, you can be quite siloed when you're not sat in an office with people.
Yeah, you can't see, can you?
You can't see. You leave at 5:30, or you switch the computer for 5:30. You don't see the people that are working till 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, and people aren't talking about it. So we have a couple of things that we've done with Slack, where we have a stress level, almost thermometer, where people can say, today, this is how I'm feeling. And so what we then see is people that are feeling like I think we've got one, which is, the house is on fire, I need immediate help. And so that's 10. And so someone's on a 10. If you're in the office, you can see that. You can see this person's stressed out. What can I take off you? Working remotely, you can't. And so, but now we've got the action where people that are feeling pretty okay, they've got some room, they can help someone. Now proactively go to that colleague and say, what can I take off you? How can I support you?
That's interesting. So the way that this is the team doing that and kind of managing the workload, and you're not getting involved in that process. Is that what you?
Well, sometimes I do. So sometimes we've got a chap that's going off on holiday next week, for instance.
Yeah.
The run up to going on holiday is always quite stressful.
Yeah, totally.
And so I've been checking on with him. What extra support can we get you? What else do you need? I saw someone this morning was I think an 8 or something in our scale. And so there's a lad in the office, or in the team, sorry, that is relatively junior, isn't as busy. So I sent a message, can you make sure you're just offering such and such some help today, please?
Yeah, yeah.
The good thing is he already had. So my thing is I'm just trying to make sure that we are looking after those people.
Yeah.
Working in an agency is stressful. You've got multiple clients, multiple demands, competing deadlines.
Yes.
It can be a tricky place to be. Sometimes campaigns are working, sometimes they aren't. And so there's a certain amount of, you just have to get on with it, but there are actions that we can take to, mitigate the impacts of that.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. But it's been quite a journey, isn't it, this last 14 years, and the values have steadily taken on a more dominant role within the business. But if you look back that 14 years, just as we sort of wind up a bit, what are your thoughts? What are the 2 or 3 things that you would advise an aspiring business in this sector to focus on?
I think systems and processes.
Interesting. Why do you say that?
Because my natural tendency is to jump in and get on with it.
Yeah.
But there's a requirement for systems and processes that support growth. And so we've got team members that are very minded that way now, that we've recruited and are empowered to sort of build those out.
Yeah.
And so, but I think that would have supported our growth sooner.
Yeah.
I think confidence is a big thing. So I'd have been more confident. I remember going through the existential angst of leaving a highly paid job in an agency that we grew to 25 million turnover to start on my own, and thinking, there was like that whisper in my head, can I even get 5 days work for myself?
Yes, terrifying. Yes.
And that was a big dream. And then after 4 months I'd done it, and I didn't have any other dream then. So I think then that having that plan going forward, where we have a very clear growth plan in terms of where we are now, where we're going through over the next 5 years. So we have that vision. We know, sort of offices we want, the team size, the clients we want, the turnover, profitability levels, all of it's mapped out.
Okay.
And we've got that written down. We don't overly obsess about it, and then we just work hard, and then things are moving in that direction.
Right. So that's the third thing, the plan.
Yeah. Have a plan.
Yeah, I think have a plan. It's music to my ears. I'm writing a book about this very thing, and it starts with have a plan. Alex, that's been wonderful. I think really quite insightful. There's some real nuggets in there. Thank you. And I think our viewers are going to find this interview very, very interesting. Thank you very much for joining Stressing Values.
Fantastic. Thanks ever so much for having me on, Colin.